Well, hello, everyone, again. It's 12:05 Eastern Time, and it's time for us to begin our first webinar of the year. My name is Kate Butts. I'm a managing partner at Longevity Capital, and I'm also a director at FemTech Analytics. And it's my pleasure to welcome our moderator and distinguished speakers. Today, we decided to analyze the key trends that we've observed in 2021 in FemTech to see what were the key challenges and successes, as well as have some market projections for the year to come. It's my great pleasure to welcome our moderator, Laina Latterner. Laina is an experienced sales and marketing professional. She is an expert in the global medical device field. Her clients included Roche Diagnostics and McKesson. Also, Laina has a deep knowledge of laboratory testing, medical devices, as well as she's very passionate about the healthcare reform, which enables her to identify unique opportunities for her clients. So Laina, welcome, and we are very happy to have you. For the audience, as I mentioned, we welcome everyone to post their questions or comments in the live chat or Q&A sections of the Zoom. And this webinar is being recorded, and we will distribute it once we finish with editing in a couple of days from now. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for that welcome, Kate. My name is Laina Latterner. I'm here in the US, and I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker. Each speaker will have about 10 minutes to discuss their innovations, and then we will have a Q&A session at the end of this. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Susan Trent, CEO at Atlantic Therapeutics. Susan has enjoyed a 20-year career in GSK Pharmaceuticals and consumer healthcare with international experience in the UK, Latin America, Japan, Asia, and the US. She's held multiple roles and has worked in both operational and above country level. She is adept at delivering the results in diverse environments through strong relationship building. Her particular area of focus has been in building brands and ones that leverage strong science to meet a clear unmet consumer need. Susan, we'll toss it over to you.
Thank you very much, Laina, and apologies if you can see and hear a bit of background noise. I'm actually at Los Angeles Airport. It feels very unusual to be traveling again, but also very good to be back out there. I have a short case study for you about our brand Innovo and really the way we've approached Femtech from a very different point of view. And that is to set the context, really. I'm sure we're all very aware that a lot of the conditions that we serve as Femtech brands are often dealing with a stigmatized condition, a rather personal health issue. And I think we all know as well that often women are just quite accepting, or they just learn to deal with a number of the medical conditions that we serve as somehow a fact of life. We think about conditions related to menopause, postpartum conditions, gynecological conditions, etc. And that is also often driven by the fact that they're not very well served by healthcare professionals. And often these conditions are positioned as something that is really a consequence of the female experience. And in our context at Atlantic Therapeutics, we think particularly about incontinence, bladder leaks, stress urinary incontinence. And I think we all know women who will say, oh, don't make me laugh, I may pee a little bit. Women just learn to deal with some of the conditions that we serve. So when we had this opportunity to launch our brand Innovo, which is an FDA-cleared treatment for stress urinary incontinence, we deliberately chose a path that would give us an opportunity to give this to women very directly. So we pursued a direct-to-consumer path with this, and that's what I want to just explore a little bit with you today in the 10 minutes that we have, just to explain why we made that decision, how we brought the brand to life, why we believe giving consumers direct access to the self-care that will help them with some of these conditions that they don't address with their healthcare professionals is the path, obviously, both to commercial success for us, but the path to much better outcomes for women. So let me run through a few charts that will illustrate that for you. And as Lena mentioned, my background was GlaxoSmithKline. And as you know, Glaxo in the middle of separating out their pharmaceutical and consumer businesses. But the way that we would come at some of these brands was when they came to the end of their natural patent life as a pharmaceutical, we had this opportunity to give them sort of immortality in the consumer space. So my background was always marry the very strong science of a pharmaceutical or medical device product, but bring it to life with a very compelling consumer proposition. And that's exactly what we've done with our Innovo. First of all, a little bit about the science and what Innovo is and does. So as you'll see top right, this boils this down to the consumer proposition that we're offering. All women know, and it's the 1 in 3 women, by the way, who suffer from some form of bladder leaks. All women know that, you know, if you suffer from this involuntary bladder leak when you cough or you sneeze or you laugh, you're supposed to be doing Kegel exercises to strengthen your pelvic floor. But about 50% of women can't do a Kegel exercise. Their pelvic floor muscles are so weakened that they can't actually volitionally contract those muscles. And even if they're doing them, they don't know if they're doing them correctly, or they don't know if they're doing them sufficiently. So really consumers understand that this proposition that we know Kegels are hard, Innovo does your Kegels for you, but we have this clinical proof that Innovo will actually eliminate the bladder leaks if they follow a treatment for 12 weeks. So a little bit about the brand itself. As I said, top right, you can see this is a summation, if you like, of our proposition. We're doing Kegel exercises for women through this very unique, very relatable technology. The best thing about the technology is it is non-invasive. So essentially it looks like you're putting on a pair of exercise shorts. So again, finding this balance between this is a serious medical device, however, it's something that a woman can think of as an exercise intervention is very important. I think we'd all recognize as well, brands that are offering a solution to a need that is very self-diagnosable, like something like stress urinary incontinence, are absolutely perfect for this approach. Anything that does need a doctor intervention, of course, a doctor plays a very important role there. But if you have a condition that is self-diagnosable and a treatment that is incredibly easy to relate to, then this is a very good opportunity. So this very non-invasive, looks like a pair of cycling shorts. It has very clever technology embedded, which are ink-printed electrodes that deliver neuromuscular electrical stimulation right across the pelvic floor. Now, when we submitted this to the FDA, we had to go through a de novo approval because this is a very unique technology. We did a 480 patient clinical study, and we got really, really strong clinicals that back these claims we made to consumers, which is essentially follow this 12-week program, 30 minutes a day for the 12 weeks. And around 87% of women were dry and free from this rather debilitating condition of worrying about bladder leaks, free from using pads and liners and disposable underwear on a daily basis. So a really strong and compelling proposition, but backed by real science. And what is the potential commercial opportunity, and who do we consider to be in our competitive set, if you like, in this particular category? Frankly, it is the likes of P&G and Kimberly-Clark, etc. It is the pads and liners company, where women are spending around $9.5 billion every year protecting themselves against this issue rather than getting to the root cause and solving. And there is also an interesting value proposition to the consumer that Innovo device costs around $450. However, consumers are spending far more than that on an ongoing basis in terms of using protection. So it's important as well that you have a strong value proposition to communicate. The market is enormous, frankly. We know around 1 in 3 women suffer from some form of bladder leaks, and we know that just a 5% market penetration would be a huge revenue opportunity for us. But as a small startup, clearly, we're starting quite realistically, and we're delivering this solution to women solely through our e-commerce channel. And that is also very important as well, I think, for businesses like ours, smaller startup brands. You know, we need to start in a very virtual, very cost-effective way. So we've chosen this e-commerce solution. It is how women are researching and consuming their healthcare needs much more broadly. So it has proven to be really the right kind of channel to engage women in the conversation about bladder leaks. We have kind of pillars, if you like, on how to bring the brand to life. And the most important thing is that we have a very credible and very authentic tone of voice. We have to, as I've said, manage this fine line between a healthcare, a serious medical device, and a consumer product. And having this very authentic, credible tone of voice backed up by experts is very important. Clearly, we're a very disruptive brand. We're going up against some very big brands. So it's important that we can interrupt the conversation that's already going on. We have this great value proposition. Most importantly, we can help educate women and they can understand more about what is causing the condition, what is the underlying issue that they have that's causing the condition, and what can we do about it. And then just a few snippets on how we brought that to life. Well, first of all, I always love showing enormous growth charts, but we have seen enormous growth in our business since we've switched to this direct-to-consumer model. So we know this is a way women really want to engage in this particular solution in the category. Most important as well is, can we do this on an efficient cost basis? So what we've seen over time is we invested very heavily in building brand awareness to start with amongst consumers. And over time, we're seeing that cost per acquisition per consumer coming down. Very important, of course, that we reach a point where we've got a very efficient model in terms of recruiting consumers into the brand. But ultimately, as I said, it does start with having a very trusted voice, helping women understand what the condition is. And in our case, that happened to be one of the inventors of our brand, Dr. Ruth Marr. She is a very renowned physical therapist in the US. She's Irish by origin. But getting this message across first and foremost from the healthcare professionals, from Ruth and other healthcare professionals that support and endorse Innovo, is the start point of building trust. But then beyond that, there's these great opportunities to partner with credible, authentic spokespeople. And for the Americans in the audience, I'm sure you'll be very familiar with Joan London. She was a TV anchor on Good Morning America for a long time. She's a very strong women's health advocate, and she brings a really authentic and credible voice of education to the brand. While her daughter Jamie, who's sitting on the left there, is an actual Innovo brand user who had a very successful experience. So bringing the brand to life in a very credible and authentic way, and really disrupting the conversation about you just have to live with bladder leaks. And of course, we look at different channels to reach different audiences. We have an audience in menopausal age women. We have an audience in postpartum women. Goop, again, is a very credible source of recommendation. They really do their homework when they endorse brands. And again, this is how we're bringing the brand to life amongst consumers. So ultimately, and just to close, this is what this is all about. It is about delivering a solution for women that has made such a difference to their lives. And I think the more that we can bring our femtech solutions directly to women, give them access to manage their own health, the more success we'll have. I think I'm probably on about 10 minutes, so I shall leave it there.
Yes, thank you so much, Susan. We did have a question from the audience. Someone had asked how the clinical study was structured, if it was a registry or a survey.
It was actually conducted as a full-scale randomized controlled trial. So it was run by clinics, and it was run in terms of hard metrics like pad weight test is the key metric in terms of incontinence solutions, but also in terms of quality of life. 180 patients.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if you all want to find any more or connect with Susan, I believe her LinkedIn profile is in the chat as well. Thank you, Susan.
And apologies that I have to jump off, but I'll respond to questions via the moderator.
And next we have Michelle Egger. She's the co-founder and CEO of BioMilk. As a passionate food scientist, Michelle looks to combat global food security and malnutrition in everything she does. She has expertise in dairy fermentation, formulation, and processing, and is thrilled to ditch the cows for humans. Inspired by upstream solutions for infant nutrition at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, she became obsessed with advancing human nutrition through better infant feeding options. Michelle seeks to harness the capacity to drive environmental and social change through creative food solutions with a consumer-first design. Her entrepreneurial expertise in social impact and sustainable business models drives her commitment to seeking mission-aligned partners. Michelle?
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm not in an airport, but we're still doing construction in our office, so you might hear some light drilling or pounding behind me just to keep things zesty. Today, I'm not going to bring any slides. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and our background here at BioMilk and the work that we do. But what I really want to inspire is encouraging all of us to think differently about how we acquire capital in fundraising rounds and how we use the soft power that we have as female founders to be able to push back on a really staid and frankly unequal system of investing in female founders and having female investment partners in large VC funds. So a little about me to kick us off. My name is Michelle Egger. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Biomilk, where we're leveraging next generation science for our next generation. We are utilizing human mammary epithelial cells to be able to create monolayers of tissue outside of the body in a 3D construct and produce breast milk outside of the body. And to many people outside of the femtech space, we have to spend a lot of time explaining why there might be a need for mothers when exclusive breastfeeding doesn't work to have something other than formula or donor milk. But I'm going to assume, based on the audience we have today, that I don't have to go into great detail about how challenging exclusive breastfeeding can be for parents and families, and how isolating, stigmatizing, and shameful mothers and parents feel about having to use formula when exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life is not a possibility for their family. Here at Biomilk, we've about 2 years into our journey. We like to say we're in our first trimester by business development. And Biomilk was born out of the frustration of a breastfeeding mom. Layla Strickland, my CSO and co-founder, is a PhD cell biologist, had just completed a postdoc at Stanford, pumping alone in a closet, unable to breastfeed her son adequately, and asked herself, this is fundamentally a cellular process. Why can't we look to use cell biology to make milk outside of the body so that for women like me, where breastfeeding is incredibly challenging, exclusive breastfeeding doesn't have to be the only way to get human nutrients for your child? And this was all the way back in 2013 that Layla first had this aha moment. She spent a series of years working mainly in bovine cells in a small lab space here in Research Triangle Park. And since 2019, she and I have been partnered working on Biomilk, focused on bringing whole human milk commercialized to the market by 2025. We're about a team of 25 people here in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, and are focused on how we can empower families, encourage more families to be able to have access to human nutrients instead of bovine when exclusive breastfeeding doesn't work, and reduce the amount of bovine milk that we see consumed by infants through dairy formula to help better support the sustainability of our planet. But none of that really matters as much as what I want to talk today about in some ways, which is the fact that we can look at capital and see that femtech and fem-focused work is not funded equivalently. The representation of founders who found these companies are not funded equivalently. And in VC firms, we see that there is not support of women at a leadership level frequently. And so we raised a Series A. We first raised a seed in 2020. $3.5 million with Breakthrough Energy Ventures as our lead. And we found fantastic mission-aligned partners that we really, really loved. They were incredibly supportive of the work we were doing. And for us, as we headed towards Series A here in 2021, we realized we didn't really want to bring on partners that weren't going to be mission-aligned the way our first set had been. But we didn't know how to gracefully say no to funds and groups that just weren't going to be a good fit for us. As female founders, you're really expected to be pleasant and happy and delighted by anyone who wants to give you capital. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much like online or in-person dating, where you can quickly feel if there's a match or there's not. And so we devised a system where we'd use partnership criteria, actually making venture capital partners who are interested in investing in Biomilk in our Series A vet themselves in or out of our process. We felt like it was a fantastic way to not waste their time if they weren't going to be able to align with our values to continue to try to pursue us. And it would give us the opportunity to say, well, you don't meet our criteria, which is really important to us, and therefore you wouldn't be a good partner anyway, long earlier in the conversation than when it often comes up in the final phases of diligence. So for us, the 3 partnership criteria that we required every investor in our Series A to follow were as follows. They had to have at least one female founder at a partner level within their firm, not an admin, not our venture associate, a female partner who is included and incentivized just like all of the other partners around the table. They had to have at least 10% of their portfolio with diverse or disadvantaged founders. We didn't tell them how to quantify that. They just had to have people that they knew represented something different in their portfolio and be actively supporting founders different than the classic elite MBA trained white males that typically pervade the capital being invested. And lastly, they had to have a mandate in their work around nutrition, health, or sustainability. It didn't have to be explicitly matched to what we were doing, but it had to have a reason why that capital was being deployed beyond just a return. And when we asked groups to be able to pre-vet based on these questions, even through Calendly links before they had a first meeting with us, we had the opportunity to quickly tell them we mean business. We're walking the walk here, and we expect you to do the same. And those who rose to that occasion were delighted, were excited to see us, and it was a clear match. And those who were like, what is this? Clearly selected out of the process, which usually was a better fit for us and for them. I'm going to tell you, it's not a comfortable process. I had many a phone call with groups, especially groups of all men, genuinely looking at me like had grown a third eye when I had to share, well, you don't meet our partnership criteria and we're not able to move any further in discussions when I explained what the criteria were. But for as many uncomfortable conversations or kind of moments where I thought, whew, this is a little pushy, I also had fantastic calls with, for instance, young female associates in a firm that had been waiting on a promotion for years, still hadn't been moving up, and were able to go back to their firms and to their LPs and explain that Biomilk wasn't interested in their capital unless they were going to change the way they worked, resulting in promotions, resulting in conversations, and resulting in just pushing firms to look introspectively on, are they doing as much work as they're asking their portfolios companies to do for them? To be honest, it worked well for us in part because of the moment that we're in that's incredibly frothy, even in FemTech. It worked for us in that we had the ability to be relatively selective with our partners and wanted a smaller aperture for our $20 million Series A to begin with. But I encourage all of us to think about, how do we use screening tools? How do we use indicators as a way to make this process more efficient and better for everyone? And at a time where there is an incredible want to invest in companies with amazing tech, many of whom have female founders or are generating ideas targeted at female audiences, it's a perfect time to ask funds to reflect what they want to see the opportunities to be. I personally think that we have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit for, and we can use our values to be able to influence others. I hope all of you are able to find an approach that works for you in this way, and I'm happy to answer any questions or be a support along your journey.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was wonderful to learn a little bit more about how you vetted out some of your funding. It doesn't look like there are any questions at this time, so if anyone can think of any towards the end, we will have Q&A. Next up, we have Dr. Samantha Ladoff, CEO and co-founder of Myla Health. As CEO and co-founder, Dr. Ladoff works to improve maternal and newborn health by bridging research and technology. She has over 15 years of experience conducting women's health research and driving global health programs and projects. Her research has been used to develop health guidelines and inform policy. She has consulted for the World Health Organization's Network for Improving Quality of Care for Maternal, Newborn, and Child Health, and LSE Enterprise. Prior to consulting, she worked for the London School of Economics and Political Science, Harvard School of Public Health, and Columbia University. Dr. Ladoff earned her PhD at the London School of Economics and Political Science and her Master of Science at Harvard School of Public Health. Welcome, Dr. Ladoff.
Thank you, Lena, and thank you, Michelle. That was an exciting presentation to follow. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from Berlin, Germany. Today, I want to share why I think embracing privacy and data security is key for advancing FemTech and accelerating progress in women's health in 2022 and beyond. For those of you whose eyes glaze over when you hear the words privacy and data security, please hang with me. I'll do my best to keep this interesting. I'm a researcher by training, as Lena mentioned, and data are central to the work that I do. Unfortunately, there's still so much we don't know about women's health simply because we lack the data. In the USA, for example, we're missing data, perhaps decades of data on women's health simply because women were excluded from participating in clinical trials or because data were not disaggregated by sex or gender. It was only 6 years ago in January that the US National Institutes of Health started requiring scientists to consider sex as a biological variable in their preclinical research. And this exclusion has really limited our understanding of female bodies and health outcomes. It's not unique to the United States or even to humans. Animal studies have historically tended to use only male rats or male animals as the norm. Whether it's improving the accuracy of diagnosing heart attacks in women or better designing pain treatment options tolerated by female bodies, for example, there's such potential for us to use data to revolutionize women's health, and there's such good that can come out of it. I see this promise for a more inclusive, more evidence-based future as one of the big appeals of femtech. And it's one of the reasons I love to think of us as doing work in femtech as opposed to health tech. For me, femtech is all about challenging the status quo when it comes to girls, women's, and females' health. But I don't think that we can challenge the status quo when embracing outdated privacy and data security models. I'd argue that a company that hasn't embraced privacy and data security from the start will never truly embrace it as a value or a priority. How often have you unlocked your phone and handed it over to a stranger? Has anyone ever done that? Yeah, maybe the man behind this Ferns, for instance. Maybe he needs to make an urgent phone call to his mother. His phone died, she's in the hospital, and you know what he'd be doing on your device, calling the hospital. You'd be right there to monitor it. So perhaps it would be okay for him to access your phone and call his mom. But what if you didn't know why he needed to access your phone? And what if you were going to take your phone around the corner out of your sight? Would you still unlock it and hand it over? Maybe, maybe not. Personally, I'd never unlock my phone and hand it over to a random stranger on the street where they could have access to my data out of sight. But during my first pregnancy, I downloaded a pregnancy app from the Apple App Store. Well, actually, I downloaded a lot of pregnancy apps to find the right one. I trusted Apple, and I assumed that all the apps in their app store had some sort of quality or privacy standard. This was back before the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR for short, went into effect in May 2018. So while the apps I downloaded had a seller named, the company names and websites didn't always say who ran the company behind the app, in which country they operated, or in which manner my data would be used. For the record, Apple says today that it reviews all apps and app updates submitted to the App Store in an effort to determine whether they respect user privacy. And there's now new privacy data that developers are required to submit and make publicly available. So things are moving, in a good direction. But even this week, I came across a pregnancy app with over 10,000 reviews in the App Store that links to a website with no publicly available privacy and data security information. There's no imprint policy or privacy policy required by GDPR on the website, and I only saw a generic Gmail address. So why the lack of transparency? Who are they? Where are they? What is this unnamed person, or persons for that matter, in an unnamed country doing with the data of probably well over 10,000 users? Now you might be thinking, okay, get to the point, Sam. Why should I care about something boring like an imprint or privacy policy on someone's website? Well, historically, a lack of transparency and accountability in the healthcare field, particularly in health research, has resulted in some not so great human rights abuses. But secondly, data policies vary quite a bit around the world. So you can imagine that your data will be treated differently depending on where they're being stored, such as the EU, USA, China, Russia, et cetera. Not all countries even require companies to report data breaches, for example, or to inform the people who've been affected. While companies' approaches to privacy and data security vary at the country level or regionally, the media seems to be remarkably consistent in flagging issues of privacy and security in femtech. These are some catchy headlines from the US, UK, and Nigeria that I quickly grabbed off the internet. Some of them sound absolutely terrible. Hidden trackers, a dark side to women's health apps. There are some headlines that refer to events for which the companies did face legal or financial repercussions. Last year, the US Federal Trade Commission did settle with an app after it was exposed for sharing users' data. That was over 100 million femtech customers whose trust was violated. And for another app that settled with California's Attorney General in 2020, again, it was a costly incident. So some of these headlines refer to companies that sell users' data to third parties for advertising purposes, or even to users' employers. And while this might seem questionable, it can be legal depending on how and where they do it. Companies, whether it's Facebook or in femtech, need to earn money. And if they're offering their products for free, someone needs to pay. Some of this does sound questionable, at least to me at times. I don't know how I'd feel about my data being shared with all these people, or potentially, my employer. I think given how women, particularly pregnant women and mothers, have historically been treated in the workplace, okay, that doesn't sound so great, but maybe depending on what data are being shared and the format in which they're shared, maybe it's okay and perfectly safe. It's maybe, right? And I think a true revolution in women's health relies on quality data. So what happens when the femtech community's data start to be less and less perfect? And what happens when consumers increasingly see headlines like this one? Well, femtech users who are seeing these types of headlines and less than ideal privacy and data security are coming up with their own ways to protect their privacy. Without global privacy and data security and standards, they're developing their own strategies. And I know personally, I'm guilty of using some of the methods on this slides. Okay, well, why do they need my real birthday? Do they really need my name? Maybe I'll use code words or log scattered data. This is not surprising. We know that data are rarely perfect. That's why there are processes for checking and cleaning data before they're analyzed. And depending on an app's business model and the app's purpose, it's probably not a big issue if my app calls me Anna Smith instead of Sam Ladoff, or if my app thinks my birthday is 6 to 12 months off from my real birthday. If an app shares my data with third parties for advertising purposes, it's not going to cause me physical harm if they don't have the information exactly correct. But what happens when femtech products start to use my false health data to develop recommendations for me or to evaluate my health? Will the false data be caught in time to prevent me from experiencing potential harm from inappropriate recommendations or from an incorrect health evaluation? At the population level, what exciting new insights in women's health might we miss out on learning if femtech users increasingly feel a need to falsify their data to maintain their privacy? Inherent consumer mistrust threatens the women's health revolution and the promise of a more inclusive, more evidence-based femtech future. As the femtech industry moves forward in 2022, I think we'll see privacy and data security becoming a key value amongst companies and also amongst a growing number of consumers. Part of this shift will happen as a result of government-imposed regulations and legislation like GDPR, but I hope to see part of it come from the femtech industry itself. I think the industry could and should be a leader in adopting, implementing, and promoting the highest standards of privacy and data protection. As an industry, our ability to learn and innovate is only as good as the quality of our data. So if there's others out there who are interested in data, privacy, and security, or you want to brainstorm possibilities for something like an industry-wide charter that supports core values like data and privacy, security, please do get in touch. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ladoff. That was very interesting and not something I had ever thought of before. I would like to next introduce you to Terry Harris, Head of Media at Femtech Lab. Terry is the head of media and at the largest femtech-focused media site, as well as supporting the first femtech-focused accelerator, Femtech Lab. Through her work with both Femtech Live and Femtech Lab, Terry has her finger on the pulse when it comes to reproductive health educator, to femtech, staying ahead of the latest trends and investments. Terry is also a sexual and reproductive health educator who has worked in the Middle East, East Africa, and the UK, supporting women, girls, and people who menstruate to be more conscious of their bodies and the power they hold. I'll turn it over to you, Terry.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Really excited to speak with everyone today. Today, I want to talk a little bit more generally about Femtech. So yeah, as I said, I'm the head of media at Femtech Lab, and I also work and manage Femtech Live, both part of the same thing. But if you don't know us, Femtech Lab is Europe's first independent accelerator that supports Femtech startups get their product to market. Our program is completely customized to the startups that join, and we incorporate leading experts from across the digital health, tech, and femtech space, as well as our superstar alumni from across the femtech space as well. So to most people, Femtech Labs would seem to be an incubator for women's health innovation. But what we believe we as Femtech Lab and the femtech space are much, much more than just women's health. When our co-founders, Katia and Karina, founded FemTech Lab over 18 months ago, they had a vision to unlock the blue ocean of female health and wellness for a fairer, better world. Ultimately, they saw the power that FemTech has to transform society, not just for women, but for everyone. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. If you know anything about FemTech Lab, you'll know our marketing and our brand uses a lot of terms like pack, movement, collective, revolution. And that's because at FemTech Lab, we fundamentally believe in the power that not only our startups and alumni have, but the whole industry within FemTech has to change healthcare, society, and the global landscape for women. But why do we choose these words? Well, what we found is that no matter what a femtech startup is working on, whether they're hacking menopause, coming up with solutions for differences in ADHD, looking into endometriosis or breast cancer, in the end, all of these companies have one common mission, and that's to acknowledge women's unique needs and equalize the current health and societal landscape. Audre Lorde, the famous feminist, defined revolution not as a one-time event, but as always becoming vigilant for the smallest opportunity to make a genuine change in established outgrown responses. And that is how I see femtech. Every single startup has found a niche solution or niche issue and is looking into that solution. And every time that startup gets into the space and focuses on that solution, they're reigniting that revolution, and they're really taking the opportunity to make a genuine change in the established and really outgrown health and medical space. And I could obviously talk for hours about the underserved elements of women's health, from research to funding to solutions, but I don't really think that's what femtech is about. I think femtech is about acknowledging those underserved issues and bringing solutions to the table. And I really think that we can see that from the successes that femtech has had in 2021. So over the next 3 slides, I want to go through 3 significant changes that I've seen in my role at FemTech Lab and FemTech Live. And those 3 things I'm going to focus on are around the power femtech has to bring attention to these under-researched and taboo topics, and femtech's strength in increasing data, as Samantha has just spoken about, and finally its ability to empower women to take autonomy over their own health and demand better health solutions. So firstly, let's have a look at how femtech can bring attention to key topics. So I want to draw your attention to the following 2 statistics for comparison. So the first statistic is from a survey conducted by the menstrual health brand Lunette, and their survey showed that millennials and Gen Zers are completely shifting mindset and conversation when it comes to reproductive health. But the most interesting part of this study was that Gen Z are finding their period much less shameful and much less taboo. So I've been working with menstrual brands and in the menstrual health space since before Ida Tin declared femtech. And I really believe that this huge shift between Gen Z and millennials is down to menstrual health innovation. Yes, I'm talking about period tracking apps, reusable period cups, menstrual wellness brands, all of those fabulous femtech startups. They have completely changed the narratives around periods in the last 10 years. So much so that now young people, those ones that were surveyed in that Lunette research, are not seeing their periods as gross, taboo, or even a barrier to their everyday life. These startups, through their community building, marketing, branding, Instagram accounts, have revolutionized the way that everyone who menstruates see their periods. And if we look at the second statistic, for comparison, this is from a recent UK government survey on menopause, and it shows that almost 1/3 of all women in the UK find menopause a difficult topic to discuss, especially in the workplace. So what's the main difference between these 2 statistics? as we probably know, innovation in menopause has been really low up until now, and that's mainly due to the difficulty in convincing investors that it's a viable solution category. But what this has meant is that menopause is still seen as taboo for everyday women, because there hasn't yet been that narrative change, and these menopause brands haven't had their moment in the femtech space. And so I'm bringing these stats to attention because I really believe it shows the power that femtech brands have to change people's perceptions on key topics that have been silenced and shunned for so long. It will be exciting, and I'm very excited to see how topics like menopause and others continue to grow in popularity as the following years take hold and more brands like this get their space or their limelight in the femtech space. So that's just one superpower I think that femtech has. The second femtech superpower, Samantha had spoken a lot about it, is around providing data to these under-researched topics. So if we think that pre-femtech, period tracking apps and ovulation predictors like Glow and Clue, before they came about, the only real data we had on the menstrual cycle was quite small. A lot of it was mainly qualitative, and if it was quantitative, it was from mice. So there wasn't a lot of data around women's menstrual cycles. And despite the recent scandals that Samantha touched on in her presentation, these tracking apps are also very trusted by their users, and that has a lot to do with community branding and also the community element that they've created to their brand. So for instance, when the recent COVID-19 pandemic hit and everyone around the world who has a period were noticing changes to their menstrual cycle for the prolonged period of lockdown, after the COVID-19 vaccination, even after testing positive for COVID, these apps were there to show us the reality. So there were many doctors and professionals worldwide gaslighting women, telling them not to worry, that nothing was wrong. And apps like Natural Cycles, Clue, and World AI, they were using their data consensually to study the facts and show the reality of what was really happening to women. And we already see the benefit of this, not only in calming women's worries, but also in a global view and perception to take women's bodies into account in clinical trials. It's been over 20 years since the National Health Institute mandated women's bodies to be included in clinical trials, and this still doesn't happen fully. We still have a lot of research that doesn't include female patients. So it's really important that we have these data sets of what people's cycles are really like. And the fact that we have these apps means that we have such large and rich data sets. No individual researcher could collect these themselves. So they're really, really important. And I really believe that as the scientific community learns more about menstrual cycles and other reproductive health through these data sets, that knowledge will hopefully trickle down to healthcare providers and lead to better healthcare for all. Now, I think that's pretty revolutionary. Finally, that's not the only revolutionary thing I think femtech has. And I think that all of this data, but also this ability to track the changes in your body, has really created a lot of bodily autonomy for women around the world. And so yeah, I'm going to come to my final point, which is around increasing autonomy. And yeah, I basically just want to say that femtech has provided women with a massive knowledge base. From period tracking apps to menopause brands, there's so much fantastic content out there. And this has really made women more inquisitive about their bodies. And with that increased knowledge comes like the understanding that there's just not enough research out there. So I think women are using these femtech products now to take ownership of their health and play an active role in their health outcomes. And they're really utilizing femtech products to look at their whole body and how this can affect every aspect of their life. And I think we saw that in 2021. One of the biggest trends in femtech was cycle care apps like Moody and Genis, and they've really educated their customers. So I guess the last thing I will say is that with all of that in mind, I hope I've convinced you of the power of femtech to go beyond digital health and be a force of real change in the world. 2021 has definitely been a big turning point for femtech, but in my mind, 2022 will really be the year that femtech rises. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. We did have one question for you. Someone was asking if you had read the recent studies pointing out that the COVID vaccine had no effect on menstruation.
Yeah, from Natural Cycles. It was a really great report, but I think that without that kind of information out there, a lot of women were really concerned. So it's great that they were able to show that there was nothing wrong.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Michelle Perugini, CEO and co-founder at Precigen. Dr. Michelle Perugini is a health tech entrepreneur with extensive experience in healthcare and advanced AI technologies. Michelle is an avid supporter of the AI and women's health sectors globally and winner of the 2021 Women in AI Healthcare Award. She has a PhD in medicine and was a postdoctoral student research fellow in oncology for a decade. She has founded 2 global AI tech companies, the first of which was acquired by EY in 2015. Michelle is currently co-founder and CEO of Precigen, an AI healthcare company building the social network for healthcare with a focus in women's health. The first product, Life Whisperer, uses AI for embryo selection to improve pregnancy outcomes in IVF and is being used in IVF clinics globally.
Thanks so much, Lena. Hopefully my slides are visible here. Thank you to everyone for their wonderful talk so far, and thanks to the FemTech analytics team for allowing me to speak today. I'm going to continue the trend of the data revolution that Terry so eloquently introduced. And what I want to talk about today is women's health and why it's so different and why it's not niche, and how AI and technology really has a very important role to play in improving women's health outcomes at global scale. If you did a Google search for is AI misogynistic or is AI racist, you'll find a range of really interesting reading material. AI has caused quite a stir and a mass of disappointment, and this is because the hyped power of AI has not really been realised. The promise was really to be able to achieve far better healthcare outcomes for people with greater precision and greater speed. But one of the big challenges in healthcare, and even more profoundly in women's health, is that the data that we're building the AI on is inherently biased. Many data sets have carried through historical biases, including the absence of women from clinical trials, which Terry alluded to, as well as lack of representation of minority groups and certain ethnicities in data sets. Now, when AI is built on these biased data sets from the past, it does not translate well to the needs of the many, nor does it scale to different clinics or different patient demographics. And the flow-on effect of this is that the AI generally is just not scalable. So to create AI that truly scales, it really needs to be built on globally diverse data sets and ones that represent different clinical settings and different patient demographics. And when you do that, that scalable AI can be used at low cost by thousands of clinics and billions of people around the world. And that's where the real power of the AI is. Aside from building equitable and unbiased AI, there's many reasons why women are a prime candidate for technology to really be able to help to level that playing field. And I think industry and investors, even regulators, actually are starting to catch on and realise why there's a significant opportunity and need within the women's health sector. Women's health is not niche, but it is very different, and there's much tailoring that needs to be done to meet the healthcare needs of women specifically. Women not only represent half of the world's population, but they're also digital divas. They adopt digital faster than men. They're the primary healthcare decision makers within their household. They do the majority of household healthcare spending. And one nuance in women's health is often not recognised, that women's health issues are highly interconnected and synergistic over a woman's lifetime. Their health issues are often related to biology and life stages, all the way from pregnancy through childbirth, paediatrics, menopause to aged care. And that's a huge collective opportunity to be able to improve healthcare outcomes at global scale. And in that way, technology that impacts across a woman's whole lifetime health journey, as well as those who she cares for, can have a massive impact globally. Our approach at Precigen is about building scalable AI, which billions of women can access. We have focused very specifically on data quality and data diversity as two of the key drivers that allow us to build scalable and unbiased AI. And to solve this problem around AI scalability, we're using a social network approach. So you might ask, what do social networks have to do with healthcare? Well, essentially a social network is about connecting a decentralized user base to enable sharing. And then through the network effect, what that does is democratizes product creation from a massive network of contributors. So if you take YouTube, for example, the network effect really comes from many users connecting. They share video content, which in turn encourages more users to connect, create even more content, and so on. We at Preston are building the social network for healthcare. We've got an advanced data-centric AI platform that allows us to connect with clinics and patients globally to be able to access those high quality and connected data from clinics distributed all around the world to build scalable AI products that are tackling some of the most pressing healthcare challenges, particularly in women's health. And our first products, Life Whisperer, are really exciting. Uses AI to non-invasively assess images of IVF patient embryos. It has two capabilities. Just from a single embryo image, the AI can predict viability, which is the likelihood of that embryo leading to a clinical pregnancy during IVF. And secondly, genetics, which is non-invasively predicting the likelihood that an embryo will be genetically normal. The performance of Life Whisperer viability and genetics kind of delivers things that people are really excited about when they think about AI. Our clinical studies have shown that Life Whisperer can improve embryo selection. It can reduce the time to pregnancy for women going through IVF. This is a terribly emotional process for women, so anything that can reduce those cycle numbers is really significant. And the reason it can do this is because the AI is being able to see and analyze simultaneously tens of thousands of embryo images, and it's found features that relate to embryo quality, but that are too complex to see with the human eye. And the scalability of this product is also quite amazing. We've got IVF clinics, so really advanced IVF clinics in regions of the world like Europe and Canada and Asia using the products, all the way through to really remote clinics in Trinidad and Tobago and remote India. Takes us about 5 minutes to set up a new clinic, and it's really a truly scalable approach. And our Life Whisperer products are also highly affordable. This means that even the smallest clinics in the really remote parts of the world can offer this best-in-class technology to their patients using just very basic lab equipment and an internet connection. So I think the power of the AI in this case really allows us to bring that global intelligence into each and every lab and out to every patient around the world. So we are always expanding into new areas, both within fertility, but also more broadly in women's health. And as we build globally scalable healthcare services, we do that through this collaborative model, working with clinics and patients around the world. And we call it the social network for healthcare, which ultimately is about collaboration, about minimizing bias in the AI, about building scalable and equitable AI products for women's health and beyond. It's a really exciting time. Thank you so much, and I really look forward to some of the questions on the panel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perugini. We do have one question for you. It's how do you position your venture in FemTech sector in regard to women empowerment, healthcare, or technology?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I think it's all of those things. I think it's about using technology as a vehicle to improve women's health at scale. It's about including women in the data, making sure that there's diversity and that women are equally represented, and that there's products that are specifically built for those women's health needs and intentionally so.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Kate Batts. She's the Director of FemTech Analytics and Managing Partner of Longevity Capital, a specialized investment fund focused on the longevity industry. You heard from her at the beginning of the webinar, but I'd like to turn it over to her to give us an update on key trends to watch in 2022.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Lena. So first of all, we are delighted to welcome our audience and especially our speakers and moderator. And let me start with a brief introductions before we go into the key trends itself. because today's webinar is organized by FemTech Analytics. It's a relatively young company because we were formed in June of 2021. However, Deep Knowledge Group, of which FemTech Analytics is part of, is not new in the field of healthcare at all, because we started around 2014. And our focus has always been, in addition to a few others down the road, health span or longevity. So it's living healthier for longer without major age-related diseases. So our group is a consortium of commercial and nonprofit companies. And briefly, we have three key branches. We have the investment branch. Some of you may have heard of Deep Knowledge Ventures. One of our key investments was AI in drug discovery field in silica medicine, which is now a very well-known company. We also have a number of analytical subsidiaries within our group. Again, you may have heard of Asian Analytics Agency, which supported the Deep Knowledge Ventures in making the investment decisions. And also we published a number of open access analytical reports since 2015, all on the topic of longevity. And further, we also have a number of nonprofit collaborations that we have established over the years, including, for instance, establishing an all-party parliamentary group on longevity in UK Parliament. So FemTech Analytics falls into our interests of human health. And previously, we did not have a dedicated subsidiary that would focus on women's health. And we're glad that we were able to finally address it in 2021. So amongst the type of activities we do, in addition to our, free online conferences, we also publish a number of open access analytics, as well as produce some proprietary custom studies and interactive IT platforms. In 2021, we actually managed to produce a number of open access analytical reports, which we invite everyone to download at femtech.health, and our tech team will post the links in our live chat. Some of our reports are actually accompanied by interactive mind maps, which essentially is a mirror image in an interactive way of the underlying report. Before I get into the key trends of 2021 and our projections for 2022, I wanted to start with our definition of femtech, and it's actually not ours. It has been around in similar form since approximately 2014, because we view femtech as software, diagnostics, products, and services that focus on women's health and wellness. For us, we are actually distinguishing 10 subsectors within femtech, including such traditional subsectors as reproductive health and contraception, pregnancy and nursing, menstrual health, menopause care, pelvic and uterine health, mental health, sexual health. And we also include such more general areas such as women's wellness. Here, as a way of example, we can talk about fitness and nutrition specific for women, trackers of health-related data, as well as combined solution to advance women's health. We also, historically, as I mentioned earlier, have been interested in longevity. So as it applies to women, we want to focus on, and we actually outline this sub-segment here as longevity. And here, what we mean by this is detection, monitoring, and treatment of chronic diseases specific to women. And finally, the last subsector is general women's healthcare, such as female-specific cancers, hormonal health, preventive care, testing, and diagnostics. So in terms of the key trends, in our opinion, the key trends that we will see we saw in 2021 and we will continue seeing in 2022 is fertility, such as we see an increased demand in embryo scanning, egg storage, and other forms of assisted reproduction. Also, menopause is achieving traction because previously it was an underrepresented sector, but this is no longer the case, not the least because of the fact that many women globally are approaching menopause. We also see an uptick in wearable devices such as breast pump and pelvic floor exercises devices. Further, we also see tracking apps, be it menstrual cycles, menopause, and the different stages of pregnancy. Also, AI for FemTech is definitely one of the key trends as well, and such subcategories such as diagnostic, sexual, and general healthcare and reproductive health solutions play an important role here. Also, we see the gradual growth of FemTech longevity, such as it applies to increasing women's health span. And then last but not least, it's personalization of data, in terms of how it applies to women's health and in-home testing, be it software or other aspects of it. So if we look at key market trends in terms of capitalization, fertility solutions definitely lead the way. So by 2026, this market is projected to double and will reach 41.4 billion. The reasons behind this are various. Number one is that women are deciding to postpone childbearing later in life. If we take Europe, this age is 29.4 years in Europe, as well as women generally having issues with fertility. And the latest technologies that are the most popular here are the projectable winners, such as the IVF, egg freezing, blood-based hormone home tests, as well as saliva home tests for ovulation. Another emerging trend, as I mentioned earlier, is menopause solution, because by 2025, 1 billion women globally will be experiencing menopause. And 93% of menopausal women are interested in non-invasive tech solutions. In terms of latest technologies, here we're seeing a rise in wearables to manage symptoms, symptom tracking apps, telemedicine and digital therapeutics, as well as farm tech for alternative therapy. Another key trend is wearable femtech. And here the smart wearable devices allow females to measure variable biomarkers and body performance, as well as track their monthly cycles, including ovulation and periods, and test urine and breast milk as a way of example. Tracking apps is another one of key trends. It's projected to achieve a market size of 3.9 billion by 2026. And Asia Pacific region is expected to have the world's fastest growth rate in this segment. And last but not least, that I wanted to mention is definitely AI in femtech, because AI can have a profound impact on women's health outcomes, especially if it includes ovarian, breast and cervical cancers, fertility, endometriosis, and polycystic ovarian syndrome. I've mentioned a couple of times already that Deep Knowledge Group, of which Femtech Analytics is part of, always had its focus on human longevity. And we're big believers to also extend this trend into female longevity as well. So briefly, longevity or health span is a period of woman's life that's free of age-related diseases and major age-related functional decline. We all know that women on average live 7% longer than men, but also there are certain health-specific issues that women face and they need to be addressed in order to actually enjoy the health span. Here we are highlighting the importance of biomarkers in femtech, such as it applies to longevity, such as biomarkers of female-specific cancers, biomarkers of general women's health, pregnancy biomarkers, biomarkers of female reproductive health, and fertility biomarkers. If we're talking about longevity company distributions as they apply to femtech, then North America, I guess, traditionally leads the way, followed by Europe, Asia, and Middle East. in terms of revenue, most of the companies are in the range of 1 million to 10 million. And we have a much more detailed analysis in our open access corresponding report, which I invite you to read because I don't want to go into granular details. And then companies' funding is represented on the slides. Invitae leads the way. And again, for more details, you can refer to the open access interactive mind map and the report that actually delves into this graph. Then finally, I wanted, because we closed 2021 and we are almost done with January 2022. And I think it's very important for us to kind of gather public opinion of experts in the field in terms of what they think are the key challenges and successes. So what we've done in December of 2021, FemTech analytics team reached out to a number of founders and CEOs of FemTech companies, as well as founders and CEOs of FemTech nonprofit organizations. And we actually wanted to pick their brain on the subjects of key trends and all of that. And we came out with the following takeaways. So number one is that there were top 10 challenges named by the 86 respondents. Number one was insufficient investments, followed by customer acquisition, advertising bans and taboo, attracting and retaining talent, insufficient R&D funding, and a number of others. Further, in terms of prospects of growth, the vast majority of FemTech companies intended to increase their teams short term, meaning in the next 12 months. So that's a good sign. And in terms of opportunities in FemTech, number one was increasing brand recognition and awareness, followed by developing a new product, attracting skilled talent and experts, as well as accessing and implementing innovations. And to sum it up in terms of challenges and obstacles in FemTech, these are insufficient investments, customer acquisition, bans and taboo in advertisement. So with that, I don't want to take too much time. I welcome everyone to visit our website at www.femtech.health. This report is open access, and I encourage everyone to download it, reach out to ask any questions. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Kate, we had several questions come up during your presentation. The first one is, where does a medical device that can cure 1 billion incontinent fit within FemTech?
Well, I think female incontinence is a very important issue. The company that comes to mind, and again, we're not connected in any way, but our analytics team has done the analysis. Like, I believe that LV is the company that has this pod that exercises pelvic floor and can assist with incontinence. So, it's actually, this company is well-funded and well-known. So that is definitely an example. I agree with Terry, who said earlier that she believes that 2022 will be a year of FemTech, including female incontinence, whether it's a popular subject or not, right? So I think that there is a change of perception in terms of increased focus on female health. I cannot give any numbers exactly as in terms of like what will be the allocation, but definitely there are companies in that space, and female population globally is growing older, so that issue may become more prevalent. So I definitely see possibilities there and a growth.
Great, thank you. The next question, is there a need for one or several marketplaces in the FemTech space to bring companies closer to consumers? Or does FemTech have too many products to generalize in one place? I often experience that so many great products are underutilized because women do not know about them.
It's an excellent question. Well, I mentioned earlier that we only brought ourselves to FemTech place less than a year ago, and we're very excited about it because we think that the needs of female health are very underserved. So, and we want this segment to grow. So our traditional approach in Deep Knowledge Group, when we enter the market, we really like to study that. So we have the, our definition of Femtech based on the, industry feedback. And we're trying to really learn as to who is who in the industry. Again, most of our reports are open access. And I think, in our opinion at least, it's a good gathering place to get yourself educated on the topic, and also achieve traction of ideas. And hopefully our webinars, which we've held a few since July of last year, with help with this traction. So I think the more the merrier. I think that Femtech needs to have more attention, more investors, and it's good to have at least several marketplaces, so to speak.
Thank you. We have more questions coming in for you. This next one is, does Femtech Analytics have any statistics on the number of male and female founders of Femtech ventures? Is it a gender balance number?
We do. I cannot quote the number from the top of my head, but I will ask our tech team to post it. It is disproportionate. I will say that. So there are more men there. But I don't want to be quoting numbers. We actually had one of our past webinars that touched upon this topic, and this is something that definitely needs to be addressed.
Thank you. And then I think we're actually going into questions for all of the panelists. This question is for Dr. Michelle. How do you feel about Facebook Meta's censorship of ads? And how do you think we can get Meta to review its algorithm or AI bias?
Wow, this is way above my pay grade. I actually have no idea how we can get Facebook to review anything in terms of its algorithm or AI bias. I guess, the way that we're tackling this is ensuring sort of diversity of data and safe sharing of data and safe connection of data rather than ownership. So for us, it's all about leveraging kind of global collaboration and being able to bring together those diverse data sets in a safe and secure way without breaching those data privacy and without actually breaching patient privacy and confidentiality. That's super important, and ensuring individual consenting. But I'll need to leave that specific request around Facebook and how to make that happen for them to someone else.
Thank you. And I see, Terry, you want to contribute, and I also want to ask Dr. Ladoff if you have anything else to contribute there. Terry?
Yeah, this is like an issue that we're really passionate about at Femtech Lab and Femtech Live. And we recently did a big campaign around this. We have a video, I'll drop it in the chat. And we also held an event where we did a discussion with some people from Facebook, but it's such a prevalent issue in the Femtech space. We've had so many comments from Femtech founders saying that, it's having a huge issue, it's causing a huge issue to their business and their revenue. And I think it just needs more attention being drawn to it and a bigger voice. And we need to get Meta and Facebook and all of the other social media companies around a table, create a working group where Femtech founders can talk about this and show them what is for educational purposes and what is for sexual purposes, because not every part of a woman's body is explicit. Actually, no part of a woman's body is explicit.
Thank you. And Dr. Ladoff, did you have anything else to also add to that?
Oh, no, I think, Terry, you said it well. That was I agree.
Wonderful, thank you. I do have a couple questions for the panelists. Michelle Egger, this is a question that had come just after your presentation. How do you deploy your screener? Is it via an email survey?
Yeah, so we use Calendly to set up invites with all of our investor calls, and made a specific invite link that was only for first-time investor calls. And we included those 3 questions in them, and we tried to make it playful. So we didn't, we'd put an answer in heck yes, we've got female representation, or we're working on it, or no, we do not, right? To give people the ability to not have to be yeah, no, we don't fit your criteria 100%. And we always took every intro call still. So we'd at least have the conversation and tell them face-to-face, why it might not be a fit. But having that screener as a part of the invite before we'd even met them allowed us to do our research more quickly, and also give them a heads up of what was to come.
Wonderful, thank you. I do have another question for you. In 2021, we often express the barrier to investment within FemTech. How do you see prioritizing values as a particularly strategic approach to investment when it comes to FemTech in 2022?
Yeah, I think that there is more capital than I think women are told right now that they should be lucky to get capital. Like as female founders, we get such a low proportion of it. And so we feel like we have to kind of beg for what we can get. And I think being intentional, in some ways, the power and confidence comes through in the fact that you're not quite as needy or groveling. And I think taking that power back and really being clear about, I know that there's capital out there. I'm going to take the time to find the right capital, even if it's a month or two longer on my raise, really does enable you to be able to move that forward. And then I just highlight in general, capital right now is everyone is starting to have these portfolio requirements, whether they're doing a good job or not. Everyone wants to have a few smiling female faces on their website. And I don't think it's inappropriate to use that to your advantage, that you're representing women and frequently represent as a woman. So being able to utilize that as one more tool to get you in the door to the right types of funders isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to celebrate in this moment.
Thank you for that perspective. Dr. Ladoff, in 2020 and 2021, we saw a great shift to the acceptance of digital health, where there was once a barrier. What breakthroughs should we expect to see in 2022, and how will this better support maternal and newborn healthcare?
I have to think about that for a moment. I think one, at least in Germany, let me preface this, one of the positive outcomes of the pandemic has been that it is normalized telehealth and digital health, both by providers who are offering it and by users. And so it's been encouraging to see that uptake improve. Going forward, I think as long as the pandemic continues and hopefully beyond, I'd like to see that go beyond urban centers and be hopefully picked up more by people in geographically remote or more inaccessible places. I've been thinking lately, just based on experiences of actually of a relative who is going through a complicated pregnancy right now and needs access to some very important services that she is only able to get because she lives in a big city. Had she been in a remote or rural place, things would be much more complicated for her. So I'd like to see more of that happen. But again, I think these things don't always happen. Let me specify. I don't think that improving digital health is just something that can happen with companies alone, for instance, or as the result of a pandemic. It requires infrastructure. Do people in those places have high-speed internet access? If we're talking about girls and women, do they even have mobile phones? There's many places around the world where cell phone ownership is still quite gendered, especially smartphone access. So there's a lot of bigger issues culturally and contextually that need to shift before this can really be something that can be embraced by people globally. But we are hopefully moving in the right direction.
Thank you for your perspective. A few other questions to the general panel. Are there any startup or products on female emotional and mood POC assessment and diagnosis based on AI?
Well, I will just encourage here to go to our interactive platform and play with the search term, and you will see corresponding companies pop up. Of course, I do believe that mental health is very important, and we're always historically have been believers in AI. So we'll post some links in the chat here, and you can go and play within this category.
Thank you. We have a few more questions and then we'll wrap it up. Who are the standout business angels and VCs who are actively involved in femtech startups? And where do we go to court the correct investors who are aligned with us? And Kate, I'm not sure if that's you or
sure.
Perhaps.
Well, I can give my 2 cents on that. As I mentioned earlier, we like to kind of like chart the course first and do the analytics, and then actually actively enter the space. So we have a report on influencers in FemTech, including the investors. So it is an open access on our website, and you can go and see at least some of the key figures based on the opinion of our analytics team as to where you can go. And there are short bios there as well, so you can understand why these people are actually selected. So, and also in the past, we've had several webinars when investors from all over the world came and they shared their perspective on FemTech, whether or not it was their sole focus or not. So, and these investors are reflected in this report.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I'll put one more question out to all of the panelists before we close. Looking forward, what intention would you like to set for FemTech in 2022? Dr. Perugini, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think it's about awareness and recognition and kind of leveling the playing field. And from my perspective, I think technology and AI is beautifully placed to be able to do that at scale. And so it's more about inclusivity, equity, and building affordable and accessible products that are specifically and intentionally focused for women.
Thank you. Dr. Ladoff, would you like to go next?
For let's see, speaking on behalf of, well, myself and Mila Health, I think our intention would be all around access. So, okay, I mentioned some of those bigger challenges, but there's also other accesses in terms of affordability, in terms of access to science. There's still so many issues with scientific literature being behind a paywall, or researchers having to publish, in Nature, I believe, $11,000 to get their article out there to the community. And these types of things have a knock-on effect on our ability to really innovate as a community and, at the health field and beyond. So I'd like to see, my intention would be access at all levels, not just in terms of digital health.
Thank you. Carrie, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think think bigger than your product. I think, as I've shown, it has such a revolutionary power. So every content piece that you're putting up, your branding, all of that stuff, think of it as a way that you're changing women and people's mindset about the solution category that you're talking about, and really push for that, because that's what's going to make the great change that we need for more investment in FemTech.
Thank you. And Michelle, last but not least.
Encouraging FemTech founders to be bold. So I think we often feel a little uncomfortable in these spaces, or unwelcome, and we just have to be able to push in and acknowledge that we deserve to be there as much as anyone else.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful panel. I really appreciate all of you who have joined us, and a big thank you to our speakers, Michelle Egger, Dr. Michelle Perugini, Susan Trent, Dr. Samantha Ladoff, and Kate Batts and Terry Harris. It was great to have a deeper understanding of the broader FemTech landscape and what to aim for as we embark on the new year. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very much, Lena, and the speakers and the audience. It's been a great pleasure and honor to host you in our first webinar of 2022, and we hope to continue later in the year. For those who would like to rewatch the webinar, or who did not have an opportunity, if you registered, you will receive a video link in the next few days, and you will be able to view the webinar. And as always, you're welcome to reach out to us with any questions or comments, as well as download our open access reports on femtech.health. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.